Phylogenetic. This is an adjective come from the field of biology, relating to the evolutionary development and diversification of a species or group of organisms, or of a particular feature of an organism, like the gill or the mouth or the nose or the eye or the ear, a particular feature. So what they do is they make these trees. This is a phylogeny. This is exactly what they're talking about, a phylogenetic tree, based on the nucleotide. Steve, they're calling from the debate here. Can you answer that? And maybe they're ready to get it set up here. Okay. No. Just tell them we'll reschedule it whenever they're ready. Okay. Phylogeny based on nucleotide differences in the gene for cytochrome C. So they looked at all kinds of animals. They looked at cytochrome C, the gene, and said, okay, how much difference is there? And they said humans are 0.8 and monkeys are 0.2. Oh, and the horse is 0.9. And so they have them all related, all lines drawing back, based upon how closely related their nucleotide differences are in cytochrome C. Could we do this with all of the cars based upon their weight? Which ones weigh? How much do they all weigh? And we could draw lines and say, wow, the Toyota and the Nissan are closely related, only 20 pounds difference. Couldn't we? Could we do it based on the speed of the cars? Could we make a chart based upon the number of miles you average get out of a car before it breaks down? Could we do a chart based on the horsepower of all the different cars? Could we do one based on the acceleration, 0 to 60 in so many seconds, and say, oh wow, this one's 1/10 of a second faster than this one? We could make a million different charts on cars, and you know what it would prove? Nothing. So in their little mind, these differences in cytochrome C can all be charted to prove we all have a common ancestor. Yes, boys and girls, the tuna, the human, the horse, the kangaroo, the duck, and the tuna, and the moth are all related. Isn't that exactly what they're trying to teach the kids? You are related to a tuna. Who'd have thunk it? How about this one? Here's a modern systematics is shaking up some phylogenetic trees. This is straight from I just Googled systematics a few minutes ago. A phylogenetic tree is a hypothesis, it says. They have drawn a line between lizards and snakes, and between crocodiles and birds. Anybody that cannot see the similarity between crocodiles and birds needs some help. I mean, obviously. They both have eyes. I mean, hello, they have to be related, okay? They both lay eggs, okay. And this proves that the birds are related to the lizards. So if you can draw a line, that's proof right there. SpongeBob, pay attention. I know you're excited about this, okay? Now, systematics is the branch of biology that deals with classification and nomenclature taxonomy. Nomenclature is the name. How did they name this animal? Why did they call it that name? Okay. And how did we classify it? Why do you call this in the dog family? Why do you call this in the kangaroo family? So systematics is the branch of biology that teaches people how to do that. How do we know where to put it? Basically, how do we classify it? Phylogenetic systematics is actually drawing lines on paper between various life forms and then claiming that the chart is evidence for an evolutionary relationship. This is a phylogenetic systematics chart right here, and it shows the whale is related to the, what is this? A horse, a zebra. Anybody that can't see they can see the line. Look, boys and girls, it goes back to the same line right here. That's proof we're related. Isn't it? No. It's proof you have a ruler and a pencil and you can draw a line. That's all it is proof of. Phylogenetic systematics. They show the panther, the skunk, the otter, and the dog and the wolf are related to a common ancestor. They have classified them in the same category. Okay, they just drew a bunch of lines on the paper, in my humble opinion. Cladistics, okay, clads they talk about, C-L-A-D, a method of classifying animals, classification of animals and plants, according to the proportion of measurable characteristics they have in common. So they look at two animals and say, wow, they both have fins, they both have gills, they both have, whatever. And they say, how many do they share with other animals? And so let's put them in the same. Cladistics is the study of how these animals, what percentage of things they have the same. We would have many similarities with a monkey, wouldn't we? We would have many similarities with a cow, but not as many as we do with a monkey. And so they'd say, see, we're more closely related. It is assumed that the higher the proportion of characteristics the two organisms share, the more recently they diverged from a common ancestor. So they start with the assumption evolution is true. Now, how do we prove it? Guys, your assumption is wrong. Okay? Taxonomy is the branch of science concerned with classification, especially of organisms. Systematics, the classification of something, especially organisms. The taxonomy of these fossils, a scheme of classification. The plural noun, taxonomies, a taxonomy of smells. This is the branch of science that deals with classification again. So they'll use this word on you. What does that mean? Well, here's what happened. Charles Darwin graduated from Bible college to be a preacher at age 22. He set sail on board HMS Beagle. He couldn't find a job anywhere. And so his dad pulled a few strings and said, would you take my boy with you on this trip for 5 years? So they were going to go out and collect bugs and birds for somebody back in England. If you'll at least feed him, it'll get him out of my hair. So they fed him for 5 years, traveling around on this ship, HMS Beagle. Unpaid. He was called the unpaid naturalist. Actually, it was the ship's companion, the ship's captain's companion. See, the captain in the British Navy in those days was not allowed to, socialize with the men. And so if he's the captain and all the sailors are on there, it gets kind of lonely for the captain. Who's he play chess with at night or tell stories to? So they would send somebody along, a gentleman, who would just simply be his buddy and be able to talk to somebody, because he wasn't allowed to socialize with the common sailor. Darwin brought his Bible, and he brought the brand new book, Principles of Geology. Reverend Henslow had given him that book, and it's right over there on the shelf, okay? Had given him this book and say, don't believe it. But the book had just been printed. Darwin said that book changed his life forever. He had 5 years sailing around on a ship, getting blown by the wind, 15 miles an hour. It takes a long time to go across the ocean at 15 miles an hour. Took a long time to drive across Tennessee at 50 miles an hour. Yeah, it did. Pulling the trailer, okay? Darwin later wrote a letter to Russell Wallace, and he said, disbelief crept over me at a very slow rate, but at last complete. The rate was so slow I felt no distress, and have never been since troubled even for a single second that my conclusion was correct. I can indeed hardly see how anyone ought to wish Christianity to be true, if so the plain language of the text seems to show that the men who do not believe, and this would include my father, brother, and almost all my friends, will be everlastingly punished. This is a damnable doctrine. So Darwin doubted his Bible because he thought it was awful that people would be punished. Darwin later tried to dedicate the second edition of his book to Charlie Lyell, who wrote this one. This is the dedication page to Charles Lyell. The second edition is dedicated with grateful pleasure as an acknowledgement that the chief past of whatever scientific merit this journal and the other works of the author may possess has been derived from study the well-known and admirable principles of geology. So Darwin read this book and then wrote his book about evolution, which is also right there on the shelf, 6 or 7 copies of it. Okay. Darwin sailed around, and they came on these islands right here off the coast of South America. They're called the Galapagos Islands. There on those islands, he noticed that the birds were different. The beak shapes were different. He counted 14 varieties of finches on these islands. Now, Darwin loved to shoot birds. He got very low grades in school because he spent all his time out bird shooting birds with his buddies, okay? So he loved to shoot birds. Now, I read one text that said he liked to shoot birds because he loved worms, and he thought it was mean for the bird to eat the worm, which they do, by the way, and so he shot all the birds he could find. Now, the Grants went over there and studied for 9 years the thickness of the beak of the finch. How thick is their beak? They found during dry years, the beak was a little thicker. During wet years, the beak was a little thinner. And it oscillated around a medium. Now, these lines on here represent 1/10 of 1 millimeter. Kevin, you've done carpentry all your life. You've probably not much done in metric system. But a millimeter is about the thickness of this paper, so 1/10 of a millimeter is not much. That's the difference in the beak shape. Darwin looked at all these 14 varieties of birds, all finches, and said, I think they had a common ancestor. I think you're probably right, Charlie. It was called a bird. And then he said in his book, Julie, can you see? That book is right behind that picture, okay? Darwin said in his book on page 170, it's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other. There's several copies of it. Yeah, okay, that'll work. Origin of Species. This is not that particular printing of it, but here it is, and here it is if you guys want to come see it. It's probably a different page number in here. But he said, hold it. That's good, Julie, that's good. He said, hold it. It's a fact that all animals and all plants are related to each other. You studied the finch. They're all finches, and you found some with fatter beaks. And because there are different beak shapes, that proves finches are related to pine trees. Is that what he's saying? I don't want to make up anything. You talk about a non sequitur, a conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. This is Darwin's ultimate non sequitur right here. I saw these 14 kinds of birds. Therefore, birds and bananas are related. Moron, okay? There are 339 recognized breeds of dogs in America, the American Kennel Association. They might have had a common ancestor, a dog. Now, somebody spent years crossbreeding dogs. Bring Bean up here, would you? Let me introduce Bean to the audience here. They spent years crossbreeding dogs, getting smaller and smaller dogs until they ended up with this right here. Cat food, right? Complete. How long would they last out in the woods by themselves? Bean wouldn't last one night, would he? Would she? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Bean. Go see Mama. Okay. Now, it's cute, and they're cuddly and all that stuff, but they're completely useless for anything else that I can think of, okay? This article from BBC News said, it looks like 95% of current dogs came from just 3 original founding females. Okay, I think you might be onto something. Right here it says, dogs today come in all shapes and sizes, but scientists believe they evolved from just a handful of wolves tamed by humans living in or near China less than 15,000 years ago. Wow. They've discovered all the dogs had a common ancestor. And it looked like a dog. Now, this Irish textbook calls it divergent evolution. Don't give it a fancy name. It's still a dog. They're saying the Dalmatian, the Poodle, and the Whippet are all related. I agree. It's a dog. The Grand Canyon divides 2 regions of the Arizona in half, and there are 2 different kinds of squirrels. There's the Kaibab squirrel and the Abert squirrel, and they look very different. They have diversified over the years to where they are different. Actually, there are 200 species of squirrels in the world, according to National Pornographic. Just Googled it a couple hours ago. Would anybody like to take a wild guess at what all those 200 species of squirrels developed from?
A rabbit.
A rabbit, you got it. A tomato, a hamster, a pine tree. No, a squirrel. There are 350 breeds of horses in the world. They might have had a common ancestor called a horse. There are miniature horses. We had one of the world's smallest horses. Were you there when that one came? Mm-mm. My little granddaughter, who's now 16, was 4 weeks old. And little tiny horse, 17 inches tall. You talk about useless. Yes, there are horses and zebras and quagga. And the horse is probably the same kind of animal as the zebra. You know, zebras and horses can crossbreed. They get a zorse. You can get a zorse, a zonkey, a zeoni, a zedonk, a zebras, or a shebra. Yes, they're the same kind of animal. They got 4-wheel drive, leather upholstery, same kind of animal. Stripeless zebra baffles the experts. This zebra forgot to put his PJs on. It's still a horse, okay? It's in the horse kind, and probably wouldn't survive out in the wild because he's the first one the lions are going to see, because the stripes are for camouflage to confuse them. Okay. Zonkey or a Debra article a couple years ago. Here's a herd of zebroids running around. Okay. Horses and zebras probably had a common ancestor. They're the same kind of animal. In the last 100 years, the Kentucky Derby has gone from an average winning speed of 127 seconds to 123 seconds. Now, they had some real good times turned in back in the early days, too. I mean, better than the average today. They had horses faster then than we have now in some cases. Question, how much money would you just guess has been spent on trying to get, selective breeding to try to get faster race horses?
Billions.
Millions and millions of dollars all over Tennessee and Kentucky. This is big business, isn't it? Well, guys, if you want to really win the Kentucky Derby, why don't you breed wings on your horse and fly around the track in 12 seconds? Then, or put a jet engine on it. Don't do that. Leopards and lions can produce babies. They're called a leopon. Well, they're both in the cat family. They must be the same biblical kind. Now, they're going to challenge me. Give me a definition of kind. I don't know that I can give a foolproof definition in every instance, but I think in 99.9% of the cases, a 5-year-old can tell you it's the same kind of animal. It's a cat. Okay, this is a cat kind. This is not a bird kind. Okay, this is not a fish kind. This is a cat kind. If you get confused about that, let me know. The tigon and the liger have been created by crossing tigers and lions, and oh my, okay. There are 800 breeds of cattle recognized worldwide. I got this straight off of Wikipedia just about an hour ago. Some of which adapted to the local climate. You know, some cattle can handle hot weather and some cattle can handle cold weather. And they might have had a common ancestor. A banana. Okay. Some of which adapted, let's see, others were bred by humans for specialized uses. Breeds fall into two main types, regarded as either two closely related species or two subspecies of one species. This is from list of cattle breeds from Wikipedia. The buffalo, here's a buffalo and a bison got crossed and they get a beefalo. Well, the buffalo is actually the European kind and the bison is the American kind. They call Buffalo Bill. Well, actually, it was Bison Bill, okay? The buffalo is over in Europe and the bison is over in America. Who cares? We just lost interest. But I think they're probably the same kind of animal. They look very similar, okay? Here's the toast of Botswana. Somebody crossed a sheep with a goat and got a geep. Okay? I think maybe a sheep and a goat might be the same kind of original animal. That doesn't prove a sheep and a fish are the same kind, or even had an ancestor. There's a whalpin, cross between a whale and a dolphin. Actually, the false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin. They got a whalpin. Well, they both swim in the water. They both have vertical undulation of their tail rather than sideways. It's up and down. Okay, you know, whales and dolphins pull their tail this way, and sharks and fish do their tail this way, and many other differences too. But yeah, they might be the same kind of animal. Somebody crossed a camel and a llama and got a cama. Okay, maybe they're the same kind of animal. They have hair, not feathers, not fins, not scales. There's a jag lion crossing a jaguar with a female lion. Here's a bobcat and a lynx cross. They're both in the cat family. I forgot to look up how many kinds of chickens there are. I think it's 30 varieties of chickens. And this magazine, where you can order them, says, oh yeah, you can get red rocks, white rocks, cherry eggers, brown leghorns. Remember that foghorn leghorn? And who was the little hawk that was trying to eat him all the time? What's the name of that Disney cartoons? Come on. Foghorn leghorn, the giant chicken and the little bitty hawk. And I say, boy, I say, boy. Who?
I don't remember his name.
Who was it?
Who? That's Foghorn, and but he plays a lot with the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Say what?
What you say, boy? Don't you? I'm not a chicken. That's a chicken over there. Okay. This one says, jungle fowl are the original bird from which all varieties and strains of domesticated chickens are derived. Whoa. All the chickens had a common ancestor. A chicken. There are 8 varieties of bears in the world. They might have had a common ancestor, a bear. This will be a display at Dinosaur Adventureland. Somebody shot a Pizzly bear, a cross between a polar bear and a grizzly. Maybe that'll happen. Textbook used at Kent State University says this is patterns and trends of evolution. Wow, look at this. Some of these fish have squared off fins and some have rounded fins. See, boys and girls, that proves we are related to tomatoes. Well, how many of these cichlids are there, if that's how you pronounce the name? New species are discovered annually, and many species remain undescribed. The actual number of species is therefore unknown. This is an African fish, okay? With estimates varying between 2,000 and 3,000. So there are 2,000 to 3,000 cichlids, fish species. Guess what they had as a common ancestor? A fish. Cabbage, cauliflower, all these are common, probably had a common ancestor, a plant. They must be the same biblical kind. This is stuff straight from my seminar, by the way, these slides are, and nobody's ever refuted it. They cross, where were we yesterday? Tennessee, we saw some of these English walnut on top of black walnut stumps. I should have got a picture. They were crossing English walnut and black walnut. Because the English walnut tastes better, but the root system doesn't do well in California soil. The black walnut root system is tough and it can handle most anything, but the nut's too hard to crack and doesn't taste as good. So they put them together because they're both a walnut. You can't put a walnut tree on the back of a turtle and graft it in. During World War II, they tried to get more sugar out of the sugar beet. They used all kinds of selective breeding to get who can get the most sugar out of the sugar beet. Average sugar beet was 6% sugar. They got it to increase to 17%. But two things happened. One, they ran into a brick wall, couldn't get past 17%. Two, the plants got weaker and weaker and had to babysit the field now and watch out for parasites. Because every critter in the world wanted to come eat it. Easy picking. The moose, the elk, and the caribou and reindeer might have had a common ancestor. A big hairy animal with antlers. Now, I don't know exactly where the kind line is in every case. And by the way, Aaron, you don't know exactly where the species line is either. What exactly does that word species mean? So I think you're stuck with the same problem. I think, though, that the caribou, the elk, and the reindeer are probably the same biblical kind. Julie, get me those big nuts right there behind that blue dinosaur. Those are hicans by the dentist that your husband went to today, okay? He raises hickories and pecans and crossbreeds them and gets these giant hican nuts.
Oh, wow.
Half hickory, half pecan.
Oh, wow.
Some are 50% pecan, 50% hickory. Some are 25% hickory, and he crosses them every which way. They're both a tree. It makes a nut, okay? This is not proof we're related to tomatoes and bananas and whales. But these guys are so desperate to not believe the Bible, they will take anything, and it counts as evidence for their theory. This is the chart up in the dentist office where you guys were today. Yeah. Well, they made one for us out here, okay? The Bible says clearly they will bring forth after their kind. And I would venture to say that a hickory and a pecan are the same kind of plant. They're a tree, and they produce a nut. Same kind. Okay. Now, a phylogenetic tree or evolutionary tree is a branching diagram or tree showing the inferred evolutionary relationships among various biological species or other entities. Their phylogeny based upon similarities and differences in their physical or genetic characteristics. Here they have a phylogenetic tree of life showing animals and plants and fungi are all related to bacteria. All this proves, Aaron, is they have a ruler and can draw lines on the paper. That's all it proves. You really think animals and fungi and plants are related? Okay, you're welcome to believe that. I don't care what you believe. But it's not science. It's not observable. Okay? This part is science, the 4 different types of elephants, that African elephant, Asian elephant, and then the extinct mammoth and mastodon, probably had a common ancestor. Everything down here is a non sequitur. It's actually a religion. It's something they believe. This is what we observe. This is a conclusion that does not logically follow that their elephants are related to tomatoes. There are big bats and little bats in the world today. That's a big bat. And that's a little tiny bat. 1,100 species of bats have been identified. This is approximately 1/4 of all the mammals in the world, according to batworlds.com. They might have had a common ancestor. A pine tree. There are lots of different cats in the world, okay? And I don't know exactly how many kinds of cats Noah had on the ark. He might have had 6 pairs of cats. He might have had 20 pairs of cats. He might have only had 2 cats. I don't know. I'll ask him when I get to heaven and try to get the message to you wherever you are at that time, okay? But I suspect they are the same biblical kind of animal. It's a cat. Here's a magazine where they crossbreed cats. Hybrid big cats. Let's see. If the father is a lion and the mother is a tigress, it's called a liger. But if the father's a tiger and the mother's a lion, it's called a tigon. Let's see. They get ligers, tigons, liligers, liards, leopons. They crossbreed them all kinds of ways because they're all a cat. Here's the leopards of the world. There are 7 different subspecies of leopard in the world, which differ in their appearance and geographic location, with the African leopard being the most common and widespread. This is straight from A-to-Z-animals.com a couple days ago. I suspect they're the same biblical kind. There are 4 species of spotted skunk in the world, all of which are found in Central America north into Canada. This is just taken a couple days ago off the internet. There are several types of skunks commonly found throughout the United States, including the striped skunk, the spotted skunk, the hognose skunk, and the hooded skunk. And they could have had a common ancestor, an onion. According to otterworld.com, there are 13 known species of otters left in the world, with at least one that was removed from the list due to extinction. The 13 species of otters probably had a common ancestor, an otter. Okay? However, the books will show the panther, the leopard, of which there are 7 different kinds, the skunks, of which there are 4 different kinds, and the otters, of which there are 13 different kinds. They show them with lines connected to a common ancestor. Now, you challenged me, Aaron. You said the only way Hovind can counter that is to meet the phylogeny challenge, which no creationist will ever even attempt to do. I'm attempting to do it. See, this is, down here, is a religion inside this box. You don't know any of those are related to each other. It's a non sequitur. It does not follow from the evidence. The evidence shows leopards always produce some kind of leopard. And skunks always produce some kind of skunk. Always. Now, if you think you have something to show otherwise, I would like to see it. And don't show any fossil as evidence for any of this. Because if you find a fossil in the dirt, really all you could prove is it died. You don't know that that one had any children that lived, and you sure don't know it had children that were different than itself. Because no animal today produces anything other than itself. Why would a bone in the dirt be able to do it?
And there's no expiration date.
And no expiration date on it. So this is a non sequitur. This does not logically follow from the previous argument. I agree. There are 13 kinds of otters. I agree. There are at least 4 species of skunks. That doesn't prove otters and skunks are related. There are 60 different species of oak trees native to the United States in 2 main groups, the white oaks and the red oaks, and the overcup oak or burrow, live oak. Okay. Now, what they do, though, in your textbook, and you apparently fell for it when they taught you this stuff, this is science. This outer ring is science. Everything inside is a non sequitur. Cladistics, from the Greek word klados, which means branch, is an approach to biological classification in which organisms are categorized based on shared derived characteristics that can be traced to a group's most recent common ancestor and are not present in more distant ancestors. Now, I don't want to put anything in their mouth, but is this drawing trying to show the kids that the dogs and the dolphins and, let's see, the mouse and the chimpanzees and the humans, is this trying to show that all of these are related to a common ancestor? That is exactly what they are teaching. Everything outside this red circle is science. Everything inside is religion. They believe it. And you're welcome to believe it. But you're not welcome to use everybody's tax dollars to force this stupidity off on all the kids in the public school. Go start a private school and teach them anything you want to teach them. But you're lying to the kids and you're using false analogies here. This is not science. This is a non sequitur. It doesn't logically follow.